Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Union Station Auditorium on the campus of Cape Fear Community College. My name is John Evans of WECT News, here with our second candidates forum of the evening. This time we have candidates running for state House seats in North Carolina, running in districts 17, 19, and 20. They will each have opportunities for opening and closing statements, 90 seconds each. They'll each be asked questions submitted by viewers and audience members of our three media organizations, WECT, Port City Daily, and WHQR Public Media. And they'll also be asked questions from reporters of our three organizations. I do want to name the reporters and introduce them to you who will be asking our questions. From WECT News, Ava Brengord is one asking a question. From WHQR, Ben Shopman and Nikolai Mather will be asking questions, and from Port City Daily, Peter Castagnos will be asking questions as well. I do want to say that we have 5 of the candidates running in our local district area. We do mention Deb Butler is running unopposed for House District 18 seat. That's why she is not here this evening. Charlie Miller, the candidate in House District 19, told us he would be helping in Western North Carolina for hurricane relief, and so he is unable to be here. Carson Smith, who is a candidate as well in District 16, said he would not be able to attend this evening. And Francis Lakey, who is the challenger in District 16, never responded to our invitation to be here as part of the panel. We do have 3 offices represented here this evening, House District 17, 19, and 20. We're going to go for our opening statements from our candidates. We're going to go in alphabetical order for our opening statements. That means the first opening statement from House District 20 candidate Jonathan Berger. Mr. Berger, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you, John, without an H. I appreciate that. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming and spending some time with us. My name is John Berger, and I'm a first-time candidate, not a career politician. I am running for House District 20 because I believe I have the leadership skills and the positive vision in order to create a safer and a healthier and a cleaner and a more prosperous and a more inclusive society. My whole career has been in public service. In fact, the last 20 plus years, I've been serving our country abroad as a U.S. diplomat, and that's what brought us here to Wilmington in the first place. My wife, Liz, and my 2 daughters, Lillian and Eve. I came here to be the Foreign Policy Advisor at Marine Special Operations Command at Camp Lejeune. And when that was over and I retired from federal government after almost 30 years of service in September, I wanted to continue to contribute, and I felt that I could help to make this place even better. And I'll tell you how. I think, number one, we can absolutely protect women's bodily autonomy, and we can trust them together with their family and their doctors to make decisions about their own health care. Number 2, we can reinvest in our public education system and not burn it to the ground, as some have suggested. A strong public education system undergirds a strong economy. Number 3, we need to hold polluters accountable for what they've done to our rivers, to our air, to our soil, to our bodies. It's unconscionable that in 2024 we cannot drink out of our tap water. And number 4, we need to have a fair and inclusive economy. Those are the important issues.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Next, for her opening statement this evening, we will go to House District 19 candidate Jill Brown. Ms. Brown, you have 90 seconds, ma'am.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. I tend to have a very loud voice. I am Jill Brown, and I am running for House District 19. I am a New Jersey native, and I moved here in 2011 to open a restaurant. I have a long history of public service. I was a critical care nurse for my career. I've done EMS. I've done volunteer policing. I've always been in service to people. And I am running for this office because I see a better North Carolina. I moved here because I thought it was a really wonderful place. And over the 13 years that I've been here, I see our rights being whittled away. I see that there are portions of our society that are being disenfranchised, that are being left behind. I feel that there are a lot of us who our voices are not heard, and we're yelling, and the representatives are just ignoring us and doing their own thing. We have to restore women's autonomy. We have to give people more freedom, not take freedom away. And that's why I am running for this office.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, for his opening statement this evening, we will go to House District 20 candidate Ted Davis. Mr. Davis, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you, John. For those who don't know me, I was born and raised here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Graduated from New Hanover High School in 1968. Then went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, got a degree in political science. Then went to Wake Forest University and got my law degree. After that, I started out as an assistant district attorney for the state of North Carolina, prosecuting state crimes in Columbus, Brunswick, and Bladen counties. I was then appointed as an assistant United States attorney for the Eastern District of North Carolina and prosecuted criminal federal cases throughout that district. I am married to my wife Jane for 44 years. We raised a son and a daughter, both of whom are married. I have two wonderful little grandsons that live here in Wilmington, and I have two beautiful little granddaughters that live outside the state. I practiced law until 5 years ago when I retired. I had my own law practice, so I know what it's like to run a business and have to meet a paycheck from the people that work for you. As a member of the General Assembly, once again, I believe I said I was elected as a county commissioner in 1996, served 4 four-year terms. I was then appointed to the State House in the end of 2012. I'm in my 6th term in the State House. I'm in a leadership position. I'm chairman of the Judiciary Committee and also other committees that relate to justice and public safety.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, for his opening statement this evening, we will go to House District 17 candidate Frank Eiler. Mr. Eiler, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here. Appreciate you all being here and people watching, streaming it. John has always been the most fair media person in this area, so I'm always glad to join his forums. But I'm running on faith, family, and freedom. Pretty simple. I've got a almost 15-year career, and experience matters, by the way. Not a career politician. I was in business over 40 years, including small business. Understand taxes. We've cut your taxes. We try to have a strong economy, leave your money in your pocket, and we've cut the taxes about half since I've been there, your tax rate for the state. Our opposition, I don't know the gentleman's record. He seems like a great guy, but his party is for high taxes, high prices, high inflation, open borders and crime. I'm for secure borders and safety. Some of his party want illegal people to vote, illegal aliens, I guess they're called. They oppose voter ID. I helped pass voter ID 3 times. We want honest elections. Everybody that should vote get to vote, and everybody that shouldn't vote not get to vote. I basically heard no questions in the first session about hardly about the economy, the border, and honest elections, but maybe we'll get some this time.
Thank you, sir. Next, for his opening statement this evening, we will go to House District 17 candidate Charles Jones. Mr. Jones, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. I'm Charles Jones, Democratic candidate for House District 17. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I have 3 wonderful children. I've been a small business owner as well as a longshoreman. I served as a Wilmington police officer. I'd like to give condolences to one of my fallen brothers this week. I am an officer with Local 1426 with the International Longshoremen Association. My instincts are to protect, serve, and advocate. Mr. Eiler, his instincts are different. During his 14 years in Raleigh, he has failed to protect, serve, and advocate for his constituents. He is the chair of Appropriation and Transportation Committee, but has failed over and over again to secure funding for the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge replacement. He's chair of an environmental committee, but stands by as our water remains polluted, PFAs and developers destroy our wetlands and clear-cut trees. He has taken campaign cash from real estate developers, but has not met Brunswick County affordable housing needs. He blocked medication expansion, denied constituents health care insurance, and deprived North Carolinians of billions of federal aid. He's a member of the Education Committee, but support funding private schools and support private schools at the expense of public schools. He voted to deny women the right to control their own bodies. He pledged to impose a 3-term limit on members of the United States Congress, yet he is running on his 8th term himself. I take the job of improving the quality of life in Brunswick County residents seriously.
Thank you, sir. Umbrella question number 1. We're going to have Ms. Brown answer the question first, and as we have in most of the forums that I have done, I've tried to change the order so not everybody is answering first, not everybody's following the same person as we go through at least these questions that you all will answer. Ms. Brown, the first question. Many North Carolina residents cite education among their top issues in this year's election, with the state's opportunity scholarships and public school funding as some of the top concerns. The question, ma'am, can you explain your preferences on the recent expansion of opportunity scholarships and whether you think the current funding model for public schools is adequate?
Thank you. I absolutely disagree with the scholarship and the voucher program. I think that fleecing our public schools of public funds is fundamentally wrong, and it violates our Constitution. The Constitution of North Carolina guarantees that every child has an equal opportunity to a sound and quality education. So by giving money to private schools that are not regulated at the same standards that public education is regulated is disenfranchising, again, I love the word disenfranchising, many communities, especially the rural communities, because they don't have access to those charter and specialized schools. Additionally, those schools have very arbitrary rules, and that they can expel or not accept children based on all kinds of set of factors, on race, on religion, on their gender identity, their family structure. And the scary thing is that if children are ejected from these schools for those reasons, those dollars that went to that school stay with the school. They don't follow the child. So there's incentive for those schools to admit children that they know they are going to eject.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Next, Mr. Eiler, can I ask you, can you explain your preferences on the recent expansion of the opportunity scholarships and whether you think the current funding model for public schools is adequate?
I sure can. I'm for choice, not mandates in many cases, including vaccines. But there again, in education, 59% of the budget goes to education, of your state budget, 59% of a $30 billion budget. The money that's left when the funding goes to the other schools besides the traditional public schools. Charter schools are public schools, by the way. But the traditional public schools, they get to free themselves of a student, but keep some of the money for busing and food and so forth. That there's a lot less money goes to the other schools than is put into the public schools. That's something that we don't talk about a lot. I think somebody talked about it earlier about the differential between what the payment is. So they're left with money without having a student. So that's, I'm full choice, not mandates.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Berger, can you explain your preferences on the recent expansion of the opportunity scholarships and whether you think the current funding model for public schools is adequate, sir?
You know, I think that we can have a debate about vouchers and whether that helps certain people in this community. But right now what we're talking about is funneling hundreds of millions of dollars to people who can afford to send their kids to private school and already are sending their kids to private school. In fact, publicly known data shows that 55% of the people taking advantage of these vouchers are in the top 2 brackets, not the lower brackets. So in my mind, that's wrong. That's not helping the people that need to be helped.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones, can you explain your preferences on the recent expansion of opportunity scholarships and whether you think the current funding model for public schools is adequate, sir?
Right off the bat, no, it's not adequate. I am a product of public schools. I have children that still attend public schools. To take funding from public schools is saddened for vouchers, like I said, it's a tax break for the wealthy. If you take the money for public schools instead of giving it to vouchers and put it more towards your teachers, we will have adequate public schools if we look more into that. Charter schools was a pilot program for public schools. We've been talking about this for a long time, to have smaller classrooms. This is an opportunity to set it up to have smaller classrooms, in a way to pay teachers a decent wage, to have smaller classrooms, and to give attention to the students that truly needs it. So taking funding away isn't fair to public schools. For private schools, it's just that, private. If one can afford private schools, that's fine. But at the same time, you should concentrate on the public schools, because the vouchers is taking money out of the public funds for our public schools, and that isn't fair. To basically give Christian schools more funding for that, we should prioritize our public schools. Mr. Eiler, he's been here for 14 years, and like he said, he's taken funding out of that. That isn't fair to our public schools or our teachers who are overworked and underpaid for the price of the housing for development in our area, as well as Brunswick County and New Hanover County.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, can you explain your preferences on the recent expansion of the Opportunity Scholarships and whether you think the current funding model for public schools is adequate, sir?
Thank you, John. I support Opportunity Scholarships. The reason I support it is because one size does not fit all. I know Governor Cooper wants everything to be focused on public schools. I'm a product of public schools. My children are a product of public schools. My grandchildren are going to public schools. But the thing is, every child is different. Some children will thrive better if they're given the opportunity to go either to a public school, a charter school, a private school, or a home school. And I think the parent should have the responsibility and the opportunity to decide what is best for their child, and then their child have that opportunity to go what would best fit them. One thing that's been said here that is incorrect: money is not taken away from public schools for the for the Opportunity Scholarships. They come from two entirely funding mechanisms within the budget. One does not take away from the other, and that's something that's being said that's very much misinformation. The other thing people don't talk about is on the Opportunity Scholarships, it's on a sliding scale. What that means is the more money that a couple makes, the less money they're going to get for the Opportunity Scholarship. To the reverse of that is the less money they make, the more money they will get. So it's not like the wealthier families are getting just as much as someone that might be in a lower income. And as far as the teacher pay, I have voted for teacher raises every time they've been in the budget, and I'll continue to do so.
Okay.
And one last point, the last budget that we voted on does appropriate more money for increased number of students in schools, so they will not, schools will not be hindered by allowing them to have enough money to cover those increased students.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, I'm going to ask you to respond first to the next question, if I can.
Yes, sir.
Residents have expressed frustration about delays in the Environmental Management Commission's rulemaking process to limit PFAS discharges. The General Assembly has authority to expedite and direct this process through legislation. So the question, would you support a bill to implement enforceable PFAS water standards for industrial polluters?
I certainly would. And I would like to say that when this issue first came to light about Gen X, nobody knew what Gen X was. Nobody knew what the effects it had on people. So I went to the Speaker of the House and asked him if he could form a committee so that we could study this, so we could find out what it is that we were dealing with. And he said he would do that. It was the River Quality Committee, and I chaired that committee. We had DEQ come in. We had experts come in. It was a fascinating committee where we finally learned what it was we were dealing with. As a result of that committee and the study that we did, I introduced the first bill to get funding for DEQ to address the pollution problem, and it passed the House, and it went over to the Senate, and it was subsequently, it went into law, and that funding started. I voted for every bit of funding since then that will help us to address the PFAS problem. Also, I introduced a bill to limit the use of firefighting foam that has PFAS in it. Passed the House, it's over sitting in the Senate now. I also introduced a whole polluters responsible, such as Comores, for the pollution they're putting in our waters, because what happens is the public utility systems in Brunswick County and New Hanover are having to foot the bill for this equipment that they're having to buy to get the pollution out of it, and that is wrong. ratepayers should not have to pay for this. The people who pollute it should. And unfortunately, and I cannot believe this, but the biggest resistance I've gotten from that bill is from the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce and other business entities that see it as a hindrance for businesses to be here, and I don't.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Jones, would you support a bill to implement enforceable PFAS water standards for industrial polluters?
Yes, sir, indeed I would. I think the last candidate misspoke. 3M knew about the PFAS was a problem, and DuPont picked it up and carried on with it. So it's all about money, which polluted and interrupt us from drinking fresh water. So with that being said, I feel like the administration dropped the ball on protecting their constituents with PFAS. They had every opportunity to correct this. They should have been on top of it. So it has gotten as bad as it was. So yes, I think more restriction is needed. However, they want to relax the code to where big business can pollute our water system as well as our land and air. Once in office, no, I don't think that's the opportunity to do so. So yes, I will support strict situations on PFAS.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Brown, would you support a bill to implement enforceable PFAS water standards for industrial polluters?
I absolutely would. Coming from New Jersey, the New Jersey-New York area, DuPont was polluting our water there for years and years and years, and I find it funny for someone to say like that, oh, we just found out about this, dumping chemicals in our water hurts people. I find it also funny that funding to the Department of Environmental Quality has been reduced over the past several years, rather than being increased when we hold the #1 most PFAS polluted water in the country is in the Cape Fear region. To add insult to injury of all of this, I was recently diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's B-cell lymphoma, and my doctor said that we are a cluster for this kind of cancer here. And that is because our water is polluted. And it is a priority to get the situation cleaned up and force these companies that are dumping their toxins in our source water to pay to get it cleaned up, because we owe that to our residents and our constituents.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Eiler, would you support a bill to implement enforceable PFAS water standards for industrial polluters?
I not only would, I already have. And Representative Davis and I just sponsored another bill to hold PFAS polluters liable, and that was House Bill 864. That bill is stalled, as he said. Some of the powerful business people helped stall it. Apparently, I don't know what happened there, but Representative Davis is the primary, and I'm the second primary on that bill, and it's still alive. And if it doesn't pass this session, it'll pass next session. The Gen X issue came to light in the media in 2018. Now, if you were a scientist over there testing Camille Wars water, you might have known about it, but people around here didn't know a lot about it until 2018. You remember how it appeared in the paper. So, and this committee was formed immediately, and our local delegations were on it, as well as across the state, both parties. And it came out with some decent bills. By the way, it also came to light DEQ had the power to stop what was going on already and didn't do it under the current administration. Somebody says about that administration. We're in the legislative branch. The executive branch handles DEQ, but they did have the power to do it. And we found that out during that committee also.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Berger, would you support a bill to implement enforceable PFAS water standards for industrial polluters?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to agree with everybody, I guess, on this and say we absolutely do need these enforceable standards, and we need the legislation to force people to do what they should have been doing all along, which is making sure that we had clean drinking water. We've known about this, you're right, since about 2018, but out in the open, but I think it's been known a lot longer than that. But since it's been known, and there have been bills out there, and I want to actually commend Representative Davis for his polluter pays bill. I think that that's a good bill. The problem is they're in the supermajority and they can't get it done. So we have to think about that. Why is that? They're complaining about business entities are stopping it and stalling it. Those are people that are friendly to the Republican Party. So I'm not really sure exactly what is preventing this bill from being passed, which actually would be a good bill for the citizens of New Hanover County and for the state of North Carolina.
Thank you, sir. Candidates, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to bring up reporters from our three media organizations. They will ask you questions that have been emailed in or written in tonight by our audience members, and they will also ask you one question that they've all developed themselves. First off, I will bring up Nikolai Mather with WHQR, and her first question will be for Mr. Eiler. Mr. Eiler.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Mr. Eiler, an audience member asked, do you support Republican nominees for the governor and for state superintendent? So Mark Robinson and Michelle Morrow.
I support the entire Republican ticket. The gentleman, I don't support everything they say, and the lady, I don't support everything they say, just like on the abortion issue. I don't support particularly, I support compromise on that, but this is some issues that they've spoken to that I do not agree with the way they're handling themselves, and I just as soon not be on their ticket, but I am on their ticket, and if you vote for that slot, then if you don't vote for that slot, then you lose your choice if they're replaced. So,
Can you expand a little bit more on what parts of their behavior or conduct you disagree with?
Well, I think everybody's pretty familiar, and that's why you asked the question. But you know, there are things that I do agree with and things I don't agree with. So, you know, the pro-business things I agree with, the economy, the border, and crime, and honest elections. That's three that I agree with.
Thank you, Mr. Eiler. Mr. Jones, an audience member asks, what will you do to improve teacher pay in the North Carolina legislature?
Well, to me, that's the base for all the communities would be our teachers and first responders. I feel, or I believe, that a set-aside tax should be set aside for the teachers' pay as well as the first responders. We have great colleges around here, and we have a lot of professional sports going on. I feel a tax added to that should go strictly towards the teachers' pay as well as the first responders. So we have enough money in our state to primarily help our base, which is our first responders as well as teachers. By Mr. Eiler, Mr. David, they're not looking towards that. They're taking more money away. So I feel like that if they were to adequately do that with all these sports events by adding just a small, simple tax for the teachers and first responders, the teachers and first responders can't afford the new development of the houses that's being built in Brunswick County.
And where would this tax come from?
Like I said, for sports events, we have gambling here that has been brought here. A percentage of that can go towards the taxes from that can go towards teachers' pay as well as the first responders. We have the NFL as well as the NBA team as well as hockey. A percentage of that should be set aside just for teachers' pay as well as first responders.
Thank you to you both.
Rep. Davis, this is a reader question. Why did you go back on your promise to not change abortion law? Will you vote for any further restrictions to reproductive health care? This includes access to contraception, fertility service.
I really want to thank you for asking me that question because I want to tell the truth about what happened. The last time, a year ago or 2 years ago, when we had this forum, I was asked as a standalone question, would I support the 20-week abortion limit that was presently the law, and I said that I would, and I meant it. When that bill came on the House floor, it was not a standalone bill. It was just not the issue of whether or not it was going to be 20 weeks or whatever. It was coupled with other things that affected women. The Speaker came to me on 2 different occasions telling me he wanted me to vote for that bill. I would not do that. I told him I would not do that because I had said in this very type of forum that we had tonight that I would support the 20 weeks. So when that issue came on for a vote on the floor, I did not vote for it. The reason I did not, and I did not vote against it, and the reason I did not vote against it, because there were two things in that bill that nobody talks about that are so important. One of them is a Democrat-supported procedure whereby a child born for an unsuccessful abortion was allowed to be put into a room, no medical treatment whatsoever, and allowed to die. I can't do that. Another thing that was in there is that prior to that legislation being passed, Planned Parenthood, and other abortion clinics had no oversight whatsoever. That bill put in there the fact that, yes, Planned Parenthood would have oversight. It would be subject to inspections, and it would be guaranteed to be a safe place for women to go and have their abortions. Now, when the bill came up as a result of Governor Cooper's veto, yes, I voted not to override that veto, just like I have voted not to override the other 25 vetoes that Governor Cooper has had in our legislative session this time. So I'm glad to give me the opportunity to explain what really happened, and thank you.
And this is an audience question for, what do you think the state should do to become more resilient to storms like Hurricane Helene? What do you think the state should do to become more resilient to storms like Hurricane Helene and potential tropical cyclone 8?
Well, one of the things actually was mentioned at the previous panel was about building codes. There's a number of things that have happened that have loosened building codes in North Carolina, and some are suggesting that previous loosening may have contributed to what happened in Western North Carolina. There's other things that we can look at as well. Regulations were loosened in terms of allowing certain housing to be built on steep slopes. And also buildings that are built above the floodplain. But the most important thing, I think, is to ensure that we have the right incentives for builders to build housing that is climate resilient, and that's what we don't have right now.
Hello, this next question is for Ms. Jill Brown. You've said that you will work to protect our public school system and return tax dollars to public schools where they belong. What is your plan to do that?
Well, I believe that the voucher program needs to be completely repealed. I think that it can be done over a period of time, but I believe that it needs to be repealed. It's really, I think that there are more sinister motivations behind the voucher program and the scholarship program. And it is a way of reinstituting segregation because it allows schools to arbitrarily admit or not admit children. And that fundamentally goes against the American way. Like, racism is still alive and well, and there are people who are working very hard to reinstitute it. And I think that the voucher program needs to be completely rescinded.
Can you go into more detail about who you believe is working hard to reinstitute racism?
The GOP, the Republican Party.
Any more details on that?
The whole, all the way up to the top, the whole Project 2025 and dismantling public education is part of that. They want to, in my opinion, get rid of the middle class. They want to have an uneducated populace because uneducated people are easy to control and manipulate, and that is their ultimate goal.
NHCS Interim Superintendent Dr. Christopher Barnes has said at several meetings that the teacher allotment formula from the state hasn't changed in over a decade. Do you advocate any plans to change this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
NHCS Interim Superintendent Dr. Christopher Barnes has said at several meetings that the teacher allotment formula from the state hasn't changed in over a decade. Do you advocate any plans to change this regarding state funding?
Well, thank you for the question. Well, once again, as I said earlier, every time teacher pay has been in our budget, an increase in the teacher pay, I voted for it. I'll vote for, and my record shows I have voted for things that will try to enhance our educational system with public schools. But as I also said, I support the opportunity scholarships because of the fact that a parent should have the option of where they send their child in order to get their education.
Berger, more than 20 residents raised concerns about Duke Energy's carbon plan, including rate hikes and climate change, during an April hearing at New Hanover Courthouse. Do you have a position on Duke's proposed carbon plan? Would you advocate promoting any particular energy sources in North Carolina and any means of lowering rates if elected?
So unfortunately, I haven't had a look at Duke's carbon plan, so I can't comment on that. But what I do want to comment on is that we need to be moving away from fossil fuels. There's no question about that. And in fact, the energy resources that we have in terms of sun and wind, those are actually the fastest increasing ones in our country and in our state. That's where we need to put our investment. We need to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. It's hurting our climate. It's hurting our people. But to your specific question, I'd have to look a little bit more carefully at what the carbon plan says.
Right, Ms. Brown, this question is for you. You're running to represent those in District 19, covering New Hanover and Brunswick counties, two of which are some of the fastest growing counties in the state. You've stated on your website that the overdevelopment that is taking place in our region is, quote, truly alarming. What policies would you advocate for addressing this issue?
So the growth that we're seeing is far outpacing our infrastructure. So in many cases, they're putting the cart before the horse because they are, the people in charge, the county commissioners and so forth, are allowing plans to be approved without even having traffic impact studies done. So they do the traffic impact study after they approve a development of 4,000 houses. There needs, and additionally, the builders do not have to contribute to other infrastructure financing. So like all they have to do is water and sewer. So fire services, police services, schools, they're not contributing those impact fees. I think that it is an incentive for them to just build when their profits can be as high as possible and they're not required to contribute to the community, that they come in and build all these houses, make all their money, and then leave. So I think that by increasing and reinstituting the impact fees will automatically slow the building because they're not going to be able to make so much money. And I think that they're putting us at such risk because it's money above all, and they're filling our wetlands and building on them, and as we all saw, all our roads collapsed the last couple of weeks. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again, y'all. So my first question is for Charles Jones. You have 90 seconds. Mr. Jones, on your website, you say that Brunswick County is building too many residential neighborhoods and not enough infrastructure. But as we've learned, infrastructure also costs money, and Brunswick County government officials pride themselves on having very low tax rates. So what is your plan for improving infrastructure while remaining fiscally responsible?
Well, that's one of the first things that I would look at is the infrastructure. Like Jill said, every time we get a serious rainfall, our roads collapse. and brand new homes developments are flooding. I would put more towards infrastructure. Now, where the money would come from, right now we do have the money for that. They're just not paying more attention to that. The evacuation system, along with DOT, needs to be upgraded, as well as our highways. The tax money is primarily there. What they are doing with it is unknown. But we do have the base and the tax money to fix our infrastructure, but they're not pushing the issue to do so. We do have a rainy day fund, and they're taking the money out of that for vouchers instead of fixing our roads or the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. So it's how they are allocating the money for that. Frank Eiler is on the appropriation funds for that. So the question should go to him on what he's doing with our tax dollars.
So as a quick point of clarification too, are you saying that infrastructure improvements should and could be made with the rainy day fund?
Well, I'm just saying the tax money is there. The rainy day fund, like I said, is for rainy days, but if we have that much tax money set aside, then yes, it should go more towards our infrastructure and better it, instead of every rainfall or hurricane that comes along on an evacuation route, we're stuck. And it shouldn't be that way. And it's always been that way since 1984. And right now, they're trying to correct that.
And then my next question is for Mr. Eiler. Mr. Eiler, overdevelopment ranks as a top concern across the political spectrum for residents of Brunswick County. According to your campaign's finance records, about half of the reported $39,000 you've raised for this race comes from the real estate and construction sectors. Can voters concerned about overdevelopment trust you to advocate for their interests? You have 90 seconds.
Absolutely. There's no reason that the success of our business and our taxes, they pay taxes too. And the success of the businesses and their taxes support everything that we've been talking about. There's enough false information up here about infrastructure and so forth, but I'd take me another hour to refute it. But you know, that has nothing to do. If somebody's implying I can be bought, then they don't have any idea who I am. So, and everybody pretty well knows who I am in Brunswick County.
Yield the rest of your time, sir? Okay. Thank you.
All right, this next portion is audience questions. Ms. Brown, this is a question from a voter from Bolivia in Brunswick County. Do you feel that the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs is detrimental to the people and economy of our state?
Absolutely. I feel that there are people who are losing their sense of safety because of eliminating the DEI programs. I really can't wrap my brain around why people have a problem with this. The programs are designed to help people understand other people. And that's part of what creates a cohesive, happy, and inclusive society, is being able to understand people that are different than you. And trying to pretend that there are no differences and that everybody can just be treated blanketly the same as you think that you should be treated is actually like really immoral. People need to be respected, and people need to be treated in a way that makes them feel safe and makes them feel like they're a whole part of our community.
Thank you. Sure.
Davis, would you, this is a reader question for Rep. Davis. Would you support state funding to expand public transit?
First off, before I answer that, I'd like to say one thing about, we've been talking about teacher pay. And one thing that nobody has mentioned, everybody talks about maybe the base salary, but nobody's mentioned the fact that the state does subsidize teacher retirement, and they also subsidize teachers' hospitalization insurance. And your question was what again, please?
Would you support state funding to expand public transit?
Yes, I would, because if we can get a mechanism like WAVE, if we can get a mechanism which is truly sufficient, in other words, not having vehicles that are not fully loaded, to be able to transport people, therefore taking more traffic off the roads, pollution off the roads, yes, I would support that.
And Mr. Berger, what specific changes would you advocate to the state's abortion law?
Hey?
Mr. Berger.
I would, if elected, I would absolutely repeal the law that we have right now that's on the books. We've heard from the previous panel that said that it's dangerous to women, and I've talked with lots of doctors, nurses, maternal care people who have told me that. It's confusing. It endangers not only doctor care because they think that they might be subject to criminal fines or imprisonment, which leads to them not giving the care that they need, but it also driving people out of the state in terms of gynecological care. It's not going to bring more people into the state as well. So I would completely advocate for not just repealing it, but putting back what we had for over 50 years under Roe v. Wade. Nobody was clamoring to repeal Roe v. Wade except for a small group of evangelical and right-wing people. The rest of the country was absolutely fine with having the law that we had for 50 years. And we need to get back to that. We need to get back to protecting women, and we need to get back to trusting women to make their own decisions about health care.
Right, so my first question is for Representative Eiler. Mr. Eiler, I have a question about economic development for you. So Brunswick County is the fastest growing county in North Carolina at this time, but it seems like that growth has been spread a little oddly in some places. We're hearing reports of hospitals having staffing shortages, obviously schools having staffing shortages. As you can, excuse me, I'm sorry. As representative, how will you continue to ensure that economic development grows evenly and quickly in Brunswick County?
Wow. Well, my county commissioners would have to decide what they're going to do as far as permitting.
You want to phone a friend?
No. You want me to answer the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that would be good. You can start with 90 seconds again. The county commissioners have everything to do with the permitting. I do get involved when there is a disagreement between a developer, when they do their transportation impact analysis, which was referred to before, which is done on developments on any state roads. And they, when there's a disagreement, I get people talking, and they'll come up with, okay, DOT wants you to do 2 million, you want to do $1 million, so let's get together and see what the real number is going to be. And sometimes DOT gets everything they want, developer gets everything they want, so usually it's a compromise. And they put off a signal somewhere or whatever until it's warranted. There are scientific ways to measure traffic and to decide where improvements ought to be. So that's all I can talk about is transportation, but we do put millions, hundreds of millions to help counties with their water systems, and you know what's going on with the Lower Cape Fear as well as Brunswick County as well as H2Go. You know, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on reverse osmosis systems. So I don't know how much infrastructure you want to go into, but somebody talked about housing. We build fortified houses down here. We have building codes for housing being so high off the ground, 17 feet, 15 feet, whatever it might be locally. But the towns and counties have a lot to say about that.
Thank you so much, sir. Speaking of housing, that is the exact question that I wanted to ask Mr. Jones. As more people are coming into Brunswick County, we are also seeing a housing shortage, particularly in the realm of affordable housing for young families, for the working class, for the like. What would you do as state representative to expand access to affordable housing in Brunswick County? You have 90 seconds.
First I would do to expand is to push the issue for affordable housing. Like I said, my foundation are my teachers and first responders. I would increase the impact fees for the developers to set aside a certain amount of money for schools and hospitals as well as our roads. Right now, as Ms. Brown has stated, they're just building housing and leaving. And because they're filling in wetlands, these brand new communities are being flooded. How disgrace is that when you're buying your first home? At the same notion, affordable housing should be there for our base. That would bring more business for our area if we had a better school system, which the current administration aren't worried about. So yes, I will speak with the developers, add more impact fees, as well as making certain that they have a certain amount of houses set aside for affordable housing, primarily for my base, which would be the teachers and first responders.
Do we have time for a quick fact check, Shay? Okay. I just wanted to check in, are impact fees currently allowed in Brunswick County? Is that something that you can do as a legislator?
Yes, I do believe.
That was it? Thank you.
All right, candidates, I have one more question that you all will answer, and then we will get to your closing statements. Mr. Jones, I'd like to ask you to respond first to this next question, sir, if I can. The background is, a budget provision in 2023 gave lawmakers authority to get rid of public documents they deem not to be public records. A diverse coalition, including the John Locke Foundation and the North Carolina Press Association, sent a public letter to the General Assembly requesting lawmakers rescind that provision because it undermines the principles of the transparency that the state's public records law was designed to protect. So the question, sir, to you, do you have a response to those concerns? And would you advocate for changes to increase transparency in state government?
Yes, sir, I would. Like you stated, it is public records. For the current administration to neglect the public, to see the public records, isn't fair to the public. So yes, sir, I will rescind that bill to make public records more accessible for the public. There's nothing to hide. It shouldn't be. This is, we pay our government, we pay our taxes, so to hide information for us isn't fair to us for public records. So yes, sir, I will repeal that law.
Mr. Davis, would you advocate for changes in the law to increase transparency in state government, sir?
Thank you for the question. That particular provision that you're referring to was part of the public policy portion of the budget that the Governor Cooper allowed to come into law. I personally would have no problem whatsoever with revisiting that. As far as me personally, if someone makes a reasonable request to me, I've given them the information if I have it. I will continue to do so. The thing we have to be careful about, John, is to make sure that there's some sort of inclusion in there about overly unburdensome request. Like someone coming to me and say, I want to see all the documents you have for the last 5 years on something, or your correspondences for the last 3 years for something. I only have one legislative assistant, and she's responsible for everything to take care of me, and she doesn't have time to go through and start searching records for something that that really is truly unburdensome. So as long as we have that provision in there, I have no problem with it. I have nothing to hide.
So would then you be, just want to follow up, would you be amenable to maybe funding an Office of Governmental Records that would handle those kind of requests for all legislators?
I'd have to look to see how it was set up, but if that's something where they could have the responsibility of going and finding those things and have the time and effort to do that, going back that period of time, I have no problem with that.
Just a suggestion. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Eiler, would you advocate for changes in the current law to increase transparency in state government, sir?
I was okay with the law as it was until some of our folks got asked for records going back forever, and we have a part-time assistant in each office, so they are answering constituent issues of today and following up and trying to get the executive branch departments to work with our constituents and guiding them to the right place to get their problem solved. So it should be some kind of a limit that you can't just bog down somebody with 50 requests for 5 years of stuff, different things like that. But it should be a clearinghouse. Clearinghouse would be good.
Like an Office of Public Records that I mentioned to Representative Davis?
It's a good idea.
Wow.
Did you come up with that? That's a good idea.
I did, all by myself. Thank you, sir. Everybody's surprised that Evans came up with an idea. Mr. Berger, would you advocate for changes to increase transparency in state government?
I absolutely would. We are hired by the taxpayers. We are paid by the taxpayers. The one thing that we owe the taxpayers is transparency. Now, the idea that you came up with is a great idea, John. We can't hide behind an excuse that we only have part-time people to look up records. There needs to be other creative ideas, such as yours, that can actually get the job done. Because when it comes down to the bottom line, is that we have to be accountable to the people that put us in office. And that includes being completely transparent. I think I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Brown, would you advocate for changes to the current law to increase transparency in state government, ma'am?
Well, we seem to be on consensus on this topic. So absolutely. I think that, as everyone has stated, we work for the people, and the people need to be able to have access when they want to see records that are affecting their lives or taking their money and find out where things are going. It seems to me that if you have nothing to hide, you hide nothing. And making a law or making a provision in a law that says that you can deny access to part of your records just invites dishonesty.
Thank you, ma'am. And if you all wanted to do that, name it the John Evans Office of Governmental Records. You have my permission. We're going to come to the statement now, the closing statements now from our candidates. They have 90 seconds each in this part of the forum, and we're going to go in reverse alphabetical order this time around. So we will begin for a closing statement from House District 17 candidate Charles Jones. Mr. Jones, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to once again thank everybody for being here. I take the job of improving the quality of life of Brunswick County residents seriously, while Mr. Aller support disgraced Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who peddles platforms of anti-democratic hate, sexism, and bigotry and divisiveness. Frank Aller has failed to represent his constituents. Instead, special interests like developers and patrons of unregulated private schools. I will be your voice for change, so please vote for me November the 5th. One thing I have noticed that the same concerns are repeatedly raised during each voting cycle. When will we hold our incumbents accountable for eroding more of our rights and neglecting the people, particularly working people and retirees? So I am here to change the course of what's continuing to go on. Let's start actually working for our constituents in our area instead of continuing doing the same old thing over and over again by putting a Band-Aid on our infrastructure and watching our new development floods while wetlands are being filled in, as well as clear cutting. There are better things that we can do for our district, but yet it is not being done with the current administration. Change is what's needed, and I'm here for that change, your voice for change. So I will appreciate your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, for his closing statement this evening, we will go to House District 17 candidate Frank Eiler. Mr. Eiler, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you, John. I appreciate y'all putting this forum on. It's a nice little drive for me to come up here from Calabash, but I appreciate you doing this. I'm going to do a shameless plug for my website, ilerforhouse.com. That's ILER for house.com. See who's endorsed me. NRA, NFIB, and many others, law enforcement folks, and see who's endorsed me and see a little bit about my history in family, in business, and so forth. Experience matters, and we've lowered your taxes almost in half in North Carolina. When we came in, the previous governor and the other party had frozen teacher pay. We unfroze it, and we started doing teacher pay in every budget. I wish there had been more questions on crime and the border. on honest elections, but I appreciate the question on the economy. All I knew about my opponent, and I don't usually talk about my opponent, but there's like an excellent gentleman and a hard worker. But the only thing I knew about him before was the Facebook post where he said he was running for Congress, and he said that the Senate, if I'm not, I assume that was you talking, that suppose it's posted as you, said the Senate was part of the judiciary. Well, I try to be helpful, and I brought a copy of the state constitution with me in case he would like to take a look at it. Particular article, it wasn't a joke, particularly Article 2 about the legislature, but I respect him putting his name on the sign and sign it up, and
Okay.
it takes a lot of guts to do this.
Thank you, sir. Next, for his closing statement this evening, we will go to House District 20 candidate Ted Davis. Mr. Davis, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you, John. When someone is making a decision on who to vote for, I think that you should look at their experience. I've been involved in the community here in Wilmington, such as the Zaya Festival, Airlie Gardens Foundation, UNCW Seahawk Club, Cape Fear Community College Board of Trustees. I served as a county commissioner for 16 years. I was chairman of that board 5 different times. I'm in my 6th term, as I said earlier, with the state legislature, and I've chaired many different committees while in Raleigh. I have worked with our nonprofits, the Food Bank and Good Shepherd Ministries, for example, and getting them funding that they asked me to get them. I was able to do that. I've got a great working relationship with New Hanover County, the city of Wilmington, Riceville Beach, Curie Beach, Carolina Beach, New Hanover County School Board, and the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, and I've worked with each one of them on different projects while I've been in public office. I know how local politics work. I know how state politics work. My record reflects that I can work with others and that I can get things done. I haven't just talked the talk. I have walked the walk, and I hope that I will have your support in the upcoming election. If you want to know more about me, what I've done in Raleigh, more about me than I know about myself, go to teddavisfornchouse.com. It'll tell you everything you need to know about me. And once again, I hope I have your support, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, for her closing statement this evening, we will go to House District 19 candidate Jill Brown. Ms. Brown, 90 seconds, ma'am.
Well, thank everyone. I thank everyone for coming and everyone who's watching at home. I believe that we have the potential of being a really great community. Brunswick and New Hanover counties have so much to offer families and so much to offer just people coming in from from everywhere. And I feel that we can make changes here that can build a much stronger economy, that can support families, that can draw people in to be part of this community. We just need to look at things in a more holistic way, because it seems like we cut everything up into little parts and we don't see how they are connected to the impact that each little thing has on the other thing. And we need to have leaders who can put their heads together and look at the big picture and figure out how to allow every person in our district to have the best, most productive, most inclusive, and most beautiful life, and enjoy all of the wonderful things that our district and our area have to offer. So please vote for me in November.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, for his closing statement this evening, we will go to House District 20 candidate Jonathan Berger. Mr. Berger, 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you, John, and thanks again to all of our hosts for this interesting discussion, and my fellow candidates here. And thanks to all of you again for coming out, and for those of you that are listening as well. And also definitely want to thank all the volunteers who have given tireless efforts in this campaign, because they know how important this election is. Unfortunately, what I'm afraid of is that the Republican political leadership in this state is still going to continue to take us backward to a place where we have fewer rights and more restrictions. And that's not the America that I represented and defended while I was a diplomat abroad. That's not the America that most people have come to expect. What we are people that are always striving to be better. What we are people that are always protecting human rights, liberties, freedoms, and security. And that's what we need, that's what we were, and that's what we need to continue to be going forward. Now, I think that that's what people are looking for. They're looking for, in this election, leadership that is sane, balanced, decent, and normal. That's the kind of legislator that I'll be if you send me to Raleigh. And so I appreciate and humbly ask for your support and your vote. And since everybody else has shamelessly plugged it, I'll say my website as well, johnbergerfornc.com. And thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you give a hand to these candidates who have signed up to run and join us for this evening? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. A couple more reminders for those of you who are tuned in this evening. One-stop voting in North Carolina begins this Thursday, October the 17th, and it runs through the Saturday before Election Day. Remember, you do need photo ID to vote in this year's election. You can get an identification free at your county board of elections. The deadline to request an absentee by mail ballot in this state is October the 29th. And remember, if you do, it has to be back to your county board of elections by 7:30 on election eve. They have taken some steps. Some of the counties that have been hit by the hurricane out west have a little different rule, but in the majority of the counties in this state, you have to have it back to your county board of elections by 7:30 on election night. And election day itself is November the 5th. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Thank you at home for joining us. I'm John Evans of WECT News. Good night, everybody.